Hey everyone, today you'll learn how to integrate a search bar with Firestore inside your Ionic application. The first thing you need to do is to initialize your Firebase app. If you don't know how to do this, I left a link to a short video that covers in detail how to do that, like installing Firebase, Angular Fire, and everything you're going to need. The first thing we need to do here is to create the view. So we're going to open the home.page.html file, and we're going to use the Ion search bar component that this basically creates the visual part of the search bar. The show cancel button property shows a cancel button when you start typing, and this Ion input is going to get called every time you hit a key, and it's going to call the function filter list and pass the entire event. You can see it in action here. And after that, we are creating a list. This is the thing that we're going to filter. It's just looping through the goal list array and showing the goal's name. It's just an example list I created of a few goals I had for 2019. After that's done, we're going to move to the home.page.ts file, and we're going to start adding our logic. The first thing we want to do here is to import Firestore, since we're going to be getting our data from that database. After we import Firestore, we are going to create two variables here right before the constructor. A goal list is to store the list of items that we are pulling from Firestore, and loaded goal list is a bit of a hack. I will explain later, like in a bit more detail. After we do that, we need to inject Firestore into the constructor. And then, before we start pulling the data, I want to say something like, there are two ways of using a search bar to query your data. Like query the data in real time from the database, meaning it will send a query on every keystroke, or pull the data and query it on your phone, meaning it pulls the data once and filters client side. We're going to use the second method because one, you can only query for the exact value in Firestore. So if you query for something like bench, you won't get a bench press as a result. And two, if you manage to pull that off, like create some logic to do that, you'll still be sending a hit to the database on every single keystroke. So I prefer to just pull the entire array and filter it client side offline. Now that we got that out of the way, let's pull the data from Firestore. So we go here, and in the ngOnInit function, we are creating a reference to a collection called goals, transforming it into an observable and subscribing to it. Then we get goal list as a result. We're assigning goal list to both our main goal list variable and the loaded goal list. By now you should be wondering, like, why is Jorge doing that? Like creating an extra array just to store the same data? So it's time for a little story. A few months ago, I spent an entire day debugging this same thing. I was trying to filter through a list of US colleges. The list had over 2,000 items. Every time you type something in the search bar, as you'll see next, it tries to initialize the list and then filter it to see if the string you entered matches the object from the list. That's easy to understand, and it's the behavior you'll expect. But somehow, it just wasn't working for me. Wanna guess why? It turns out that my data was being returned as a promise, and the list was so big that by the time it was ready to be used, the initialize functions had already happened, and it was trying to initialize an undefined array, so everything was breaking. So I came up with this little hack and created two arrays. That way, when I need to initialize my data on keystroke, I just assign the value of the backup, let's call it a backup array, that happens on the spot. And my filter method then filters the right array. So now you know why it's there. Let's create the initialize function that we'll use on our filter function. This is just like, I don't know, resetting the goal list array. And every time we initialize our list, we'll just use that ready-to-use backup array instead of calling all the data again from Firebase. Now it's time to create the filter list function that we called in the HTML. We're calling the filter list and we're receiving the event as a parameter. So every time we trigger this, remember we're using an ion input, so this triggers every time I hit a key inside the search bar. So every time that happens, we are initializing the entire list. We are getting our search term, that's what we're typing here. Like if I start typing body, and it starts doing the job. Then we check if there is a search term, because maybe I was just deleting it, and if I delete it and there's nothing there, I just want to exit the function. And then we are going to use a JavaScript function for arrays that's called filter, and we're going to look through the goal list, and what we're going to do is that we're going to first make sure that both the goal name and the search term are there, and then we are going to return that item if it matches our search term. So every time the function gets called, it initializes the array, makes sure there's a search term there, and then checks for it inside our application. See, right now you should have a working search bar. Look at it here, like hit the gym, and if I click the backspace, it starts searching again. And it should be filtering against the list of your Firebase database. If you want to take a deeper dive on Ionic and Firebase, I'm going to leave a link to a free course I have that explains more in detail how to use the JavaScript SDK and a lot of cool tricks like how to use authentication, the entire CRUD, the storage, and Firebase security rules. Let me know what you think about the video in the comments below.